All right, welcome everybody. My name is Steve Sidoric with AIAA. I've been speaking with many of you over these past few months about the CVD program. And thank you again for your interest in supporting this program. We really, this is our biggest grassroots event every year, and we usually have a lot of fun here in DC on the Hill. This is our first year doing it virtually, but we have a lot of interest from all over the country, all different types of members. So we're really looking forward to next week. With me today, I want to first introduce our Executive Director, Dan Dunbacher, who will provide some opening remarks.
Well, hello everyone, and welcome to the Congressional Visit Day 2021 training. I'm Dan Dunbacher, the Executive Director of AIAA. For those of you who do not know me, and I've already looked at the list, and there are several of you who do know me, so I feel sorry for you. I'd like to thank everyone for taking the time to participate. This is our 23rd annual Congressional Visits Day, so thank you for being there. We all had to cancel last year because of the pandemic, which was obviously not what we wanted to do. And this year we're doing it virtually, which is the nature of things. We would much prefer to be walking the halls of Congress. Even that would be hard these days outside the pandemic. And meeting with the legislators face to face, but the virtual platform allows us to at least keep the conversation going and to get the messages delivered to the congressional offices. Like all the AIAA forums and programming, we fully anticipate that CVD will be a hybrid event going forward. So continue to see that happen. Turnout is definitely higher this year. We have nearly 200 members registered, 34 states, 40 sections will engage this year. That is absolutely amazing. So thank you again for being here. As in our previous years, many of our participants are students and young professionals. You guys are the future of the industry, the future of aerospace, and your engagement in public policy activities really makes an impact with the lawmakers and their staffs. They really like to hear, want to hear the younger generation perspective. So please don't be bashful. This is especially true as COVID-19 pandemic has weakened the resilient aerospace and defense industry. There have been enormous revenue losses, especially on the commercial side, large scale unemployment in aviation, challenges to our military capabilities, and impacts to the essential supply chain with the small and mid-sized companies are all creating a very difficult situation that requires the help of the decision makers in Washington, D.C. So this CVD is very, very important, and it's imperative for us to explain how the pandemic has created a crisis for the industry, how the industry is critical to our economic and national security, and how it will be an essential part of our nation's rapid recovery from the pandemic. We need Congress to support the people and the companies of the sector by providing adequate funding for the programs, missions, increasing investments in research and development, and enabling a diverse and robust workforce pipeline. We hope that you find this experience to be rewarding and will choose to participate in future congressional visit days. I also hope that you will leverage this experience by participating in your section's public policy activities, because the Institute will continue to need your help to address the profession's public policy needs. Your involvement at the federal, state, and local levels drives our success and ensures that AIAA continues to lead the way on issue advocacy impacting our aerospace community. Once again, thank you very much for all that you are doing. Thank you for being a part of this effort. Thank you for helping raise the awareness of the long-term value that science, engineering, and technology bring to the nation. Have a great week of advocacy and enjoy the rest of this training session as well as the rest of the week. And we look forward to great results. So, Steve, I'll turn it back to you.
Yeah, thank you very much, Dan. We appreciate your comments. Next, I would like to introduce our Public Policy Chair, Tim Dominic, and he will provide some opening remarks as well.
Thank you, Steve. And Dan, thank you very much for that guidance coming from your position within the Institute. As Dan indicated, this is a long-running program that the Public Policy Committee has put on for AIAA. It is probably the single largest activity that we can do for our members and get them involved and help you share your voice as part of the Institute and part of the industry. So very excited to have as many of you supporting the event this year that we are. As Dan indicated, this is a near record turnout. I think this would be the second largest event we've ever had. And certainly thank you to Robert and Matt and the rest of the Public Policy Advocacy Working Group that has been leading the effort to plan this event and transition us from what has been a traditionally in-person event to this virtual stage. We're hoping this goes well. I'm sure there's going to be some lessons learned out of this. But as Dan indicated, this may be the direction we need to go in the future with a lot of these advocacy activities. So again, thank you very much for donating your time to this activity. And I'll turn it over to Robert and Matt to kick off the training for everybody.
Awesome. Thank you, Tim. So what you're seeing on the screen now is our agenda for today. We've got a lot to cover today, but it'll be really worthwhile and useful packet as we prepare for our meetings. I'll just highlight a couple of things that we're doing. This first hour is going to be spent with a little background information. We'll give you some idea about background on the key issues, which hopefully at this point you've already become familiar with and started to read and understand. We'll also give you some pertinent legislation and other information that'll help support your meetings. And then we'll transition over to a couple guest speakers that are going to provide us some really useful information. We'll first start with Kate Cron, who's the Vice President of Government Relations at Jacobs. And this is something that she does, regular outreach to Congress and congressional offices on behalf of the industry. So she'll give us some good feedback on how we can effectively deliver our message. Then around 2:30 or 2:25, we'll get some remarks from Rick Podoliska, who's the Senior Policy Advisor for Representative Bill Posey. And then we'll get similar information from the government side on what the government offices really need, from a staff perspective, what's the best way to deliver our message and be productive. We'll have a little time there for a short break. And then towards the end, we'll have some do's and don'ts, some guidance on things we may want to make sure that we do in our meetings and some things we definitely want to make sure we don't do in our meetings. We have some recordings of a good Hill visit example and a bad Hill visit example. So definitely stay tuned for that. It's fun and both useful as well. With regards to, we'll have some time for question and answer. I'll get into on the next slide how we do that. And then the remaining hour of our program here today is reserved for state teams to have breakout sessions. So hopefully at this point, your state captains have either set up a separate Zoom call or telecon for all of you to get together and discuss. The purpose of that time is to go through your calendar for next week. What meetings do you have scheduled? What are you still working on? And go over a general plan for what you plan to do in your meetings. Who's going to do the opening? What key issues are you going to discuss? Perhaps some background on the representatives. So please all get with your state captains at that point and use that time to help you prepare for next week. So with regards to question and answers, we'll be using the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom window. While we're going through the presentation, you're welcome to dump questions in there. I know Steve and Tim and perhaps some of the rest of the panelists will be monitoring that as we go, trying to address some simple questions, and then we'll reserve some of those for the Q&A session about 3:45. And with that, I will hand it over to Robert, who's going to start going through some background on the legislative process.
Thank you, Matt. And I think we're having an issue with slides advancing for non-panelists. If you're not a panelist, could you go over to the chat and just let us know whether you're seeing the legislative process? All good. All right, very good. Looks like we're all good. Thank you. Good responses. Okay. So we're going to talk about the legislative process a little bit, and this legislative process is really more focused on your general bills. We'll talk a little bit about authorizations and appropriations as well. Those are handled slightly different than your one-off bills, which we have some that we support. But it's basically your Schoolhouse Rock / Jon Stewart, John Oliver / Simpsons thing here. And everything starts with an idea. And a lot of those ideas come from groups like AIAA and other, trade industry folks and trade associations will bring an idea to a member of Congress, and the member of Congress will go, "That's a great idea. I want to introduce a bill." And so they will craft the bill. They'll work with legislative counsel to make sure that everything is correct. And make sure that everything is constitutional with what they're doing. And then they will, most times, there's several opportunities for congressmen to sort of weigh in as far as support for bills. And so a congressman will probably organize a few bipartisan folks to have original co-sponsors before they drop it in the hopper. Now it goes to the hopper, which is it's a box where you go. When I was a congressional staffer, we would drop it at the cloakroom. They would put it in the hopper, and then that bill would get assigned a legislative number, and then it would be assigned to a committee. The bill will then go to committee. That's where a lot of bills end. They get to the committee and they'll either not have a hearing, or it's possible that they'll have a hearing and they'll mark it up and move it forward. And so this is another opportunity where members of Congress can sort of weigh in. And before it gets to committee as well, and that's what you'll see Steve ask for, is like, hey, we want co-sponsors for, I'll give you an example of one that we did before, the gold medal bill for the Hidden Figures. And so we had folks going out saying, hey, will you co-sponsor this? Because with certain bills, if you don't get to a certain co-sponsor level, then the speaker will not necessarily be interested in pulling it up because she's not sure she can pass it. And so the bill goes to committee. They'll vote to either accept or reject the bill or make changes before sending it either to the House floor or the Senate floor, whichever chamber it's in. Then it's possible, though, that they could do some subcommittee work before that, and then they'll move it out of the committee. They'll report it out. They don't pass it, they report it out, either with amendments or without. And so then assuming this bill has passed the committee, gone forward from the committee, been advanced by the committee, it will then potentially be put on the floor for debate and consideration. And then once it's passed by one chamber, the bill will go over to the other chamber for their consideration. Has to be passed by both committees, or both chambers. And then once it is passed, assuming they pass the same thing, it'll go on to the president for their work. But usually there's another amendment process, and at some points they'll go to what is called conference to go over those bills if they're more sort of complicated. So this is your basic, soup to nuts passage of a general bill. Appropriations bills are a little bit different, and authorization bills are a little bit different because they're so wide ranging. There's a lot more committee work and committees working back and forth across the different chambers and both across the aisle as well, to make sure that what they're putting forward is good and meets the needs and wants of both sides, so that they can get it to the president to get signed into law. And so that's pretty much it, for the legislative process, and happy to answer. Let's see, still no questions in the Q&A, so we will move on to the next slide. All right, federal appropriations process. So this is a cycle. Remember that there's a difference between the authorization bills and the appropriations bills. The appropriations bills actually assign money to line items. Authorizations bills are more policy focused. Authorizations have their place. Pretty much the only place where you're going to see regular authorizations every year is defense. NASA has authorizations, FAA has authorizations, but they're not as regular. We have been in a situation basically since 2010, we really haven't had long-term authorizations for NASA. That was the last big one that we did. And so we've been sort of going year to year with authorizations. And the implications of that are you're not allowed to authorize on an appropriations bill. And so, if you want to get something policy done wise, you got to have that authorization process. So, all right, it all starts with the president's budget request. And it is a request to Congress. The appropriators will tell you what to do with that request, but it comes over in February. A little bit different this year because we're in a new administration, and so we're expecting to see the skinny budget sometime this month, which is a shortened version of the budget requests. And it's because, as a new administration is coming on, they're trying to figure out where everything goes and that kind of thing. And it just takes a little while to get rolling. At the same time, around April, the Budget Committee sets the 302B allocations, which are the top lines for each of the appropriations bills. And then your Senate Appropriations and House Appropriations committees will draft and pass their appropriations bills. That starts with your subcommittee markups, and they'll go from subcommittee, those are usually really quick. If you blink, you miss them. And really, it's just the first opportunity to see what the bill looks like. Then you'll go into the full committee appropriations markups. Those take a long time usually, and there's multiple amendments offered by both sides trying to get exactly what they want in the bill. Then those bills, now I will say funding legislation must start in the House. And so whatever appropriations bill finally gets passed, it is an HR whatever. But the Senate will work theirs as well. And then they'll work together to try to get to a final product. And usually that happens with a conference with the staff working on both sides, trying to make sure that their committee members and their leadership are pleased with the final product. And so then that will go, once it's passed the House and then the Senate, and then they've had a conference, they'll pass that conference report, and it will go to the White House to be signed into law. And that's supposed to be done, must be done by October 1st. That's the beginning of the new fiscal year. Over the past few years, actually, I will tell you exactly, 1996 was the last time that on October 1st, we had all 12 appropriations bills passed. And so generally you have what's called a continuing resolution, and in the worst cases, a shutdown or partial shutdown, which we've experienced several times in the last few years. We also, alternate approaches. This has happened very frequently, an omnibus bill where you throw all the bills together and pass them all at once. And that happens, and you'll say, well, we're spending $3 trillion with one vote, and there you have it. Okay, I have a question in the Q&A box. Please explain how OMB plays into this process. Do elected members and staff rely on OMB analysis for their willingness to develop the bill or approve it? OMB has a really big role to play because before that White House budget comes out, before the budget request from the White House comes out, the agencies will have submitted their budget request to OMB. And OMB will say, oh, well, that's very nice, but here is what you have to work with. And so they'll go, the agencies will go and rejigger their numbers so it looks right. And they'll do a lot of back and forth. OMB sort of plays in the background there. Now, elected members of Congress, we do look at OMB analysis. We did look at OMB analysis, but in general, since it is a separate branch of government, we relied on Congressional Budget Office. We relied on GAO as well to try to make recommendations. But yeah, OMB does sort of play in there also because let me tell you, when I was in DC, it was like my first week, and a friend of mine who was working in OMB said, all right, what's the most most important job and highest powered job in Washington? And I made a couple of guesses, and he goes, no, the highest powered job in America is working for OMB in an area where the president is not focused, because you get to do a lot of policy setting if you're an OMB, because once these appropriations bills are passed and the White House signs off of them, the agencies have to come back with their operating plan, and there are puts and takes and all that stuff. So it's a long, sort of convoluted process. But yes, OMB does play an important role in there. When does a policy remain just a policy, and what makes someone decide to move it into legislation? That's a very good question, because you have within these bills both bill language and report language. Bill language carries the force of law, while report language is advisory, and it offers recommendations on how to move forward, but the agency is not bound by law to do that. So what it comes down to is this important enough to put it in bill language, that this is so important? And I'll give you an example. I worked for John Culberson of Texas. He was a big fan of Europa and wanted to make sure that Europa got funded to fly both the Clipper and the lander. And it was one of the only programs that got put into bill language, the only thing that NASA was required to do. And so it was a very rare thing to get something that directive there. And so it's generally, there's just not enough space to put everything into bill language. You put a majority of it into that report language. Also because we trust our executive leaders to do what's best for their agency and to check in when there are major changes. And so there's a bit of respect that sort of goes back and forth. So I hope I answered those couple of questions, and we can move on. Let's see. All right, our key issues. Why are we doing Congressional Visit Day? Congressional Visit Day is to express the key issues of AIAA and to offer support to Congress as we move forward. So we're just going to blush over these because you should be studying these in depth, and there should be people assigned on your teams to handle these policy pillars. Just know that we're gonna move it at some relatively quick speed here. Okay, so 3 policy pillars: funding stability and competitiveness, research and development innovation, workforce development and enhancement. Our motive is to strengthen our profession and serve as valued resource for decision makers. All right, next. So here's our executive summary. We want to talk about how COVID has affected the aerospace and defense industry. We want to talk about how we are critical to both the economy and to our national security. We want to talk about how our industry has stepped up to help with COVID, with PPE and ventilators, etc. And we want to make sure that they understand how important our sector is to the nation, and also climate change and studying climate change and making adjustments there is important. All right, next. Okay, Steve, I'm going to kick it over to Steve. He's going to cover these pertinent pieces of legislation real quick.
Yeah, and I'm going to go quickly through these as well, but this is good information to have. And I know some people are having issues seeing the slides. I purposely don't send them in advance because I want our registrants to attend this formal training session, and I'm sorry that you're having difficulties. We will get you those slides. We're going to try to do it either during this session or immediately following. So if you can just bear with us, listen in, you will get this information in written form at some point. These related to COVID, we have some bills that were introduced that really help our sector during this difficult time. The RISE Act, which was introduced by Diana DeGette, She is currently in committee, like Robert was saying earlier. A lot of bills get introduced and go straight to committee and nothing happens. But this particular bill will provide great funds for the science agencies and doing research and development. And that's specifically on the pandemic. So that's a bill of interest to us. And the Aviation Manufacturing Jobs Protection Act, this was a bill introduced and actually is now been included in the American Rescue Plan that is going to be signed by President Biden today, this afternoon. This provides relief for those employees at risk of being furloughed, especially in the aviation sector, of being furloughed or at risk of losing their jobs. And the government will help provide some financial support to help those companies protect those jobs. And that was introduced by Senator Jerry Moran from Kansas. So I put these lawmakers, their names and their, obviously you should know if they are in your district, in your state. But if you're talking with these lawmakers, we don't want you to share this specific pertinent legislation, the list with them in your meetings, but this is something that you could possibly raise in your meeting. So if you're meeting with Diana DeGette, you can mention the RISE Act and how it is important, especially now during the pandemic, when our sector is suffering, that continued funding for these research programs studying the pandemic is essential. So, but we are very happy that this Manufacturing Jobs Protection Act was included in the American Rescue Plan.
Okay. All right. Hang on. I don't know why. Sorry, I had a bit of a technical issue there. I will say that as we're going through these key bills, it's important for you as a team to have an understanding of whether your members that you're meeting with are co-sponsors of these pieces of legislation. So I would encourage you to go to congress.gov, look up these individual pieces of legislation and check the sponsor list for your members so that you can be informed on that. So one of our policy pillars here, funding stability and competitiveness. Our goal is to make sure that the aerospace and defense sector has stable and sustained funding, and that our DoD is allowed to do multi-year acquisitions and operations, that NASA can meet its short-term and long-term program mission requirements, and that we don't go into major changes that only prolong certain things, and FAA, that they are able to have safe and ongoing operations, vital technology advancements, and collaboration with global civil aviation, foundational applied research at federal laboratories and universities. That is a very important role of the federal government to provide that basic and applied research so that we can build off of that, with industry. Streamlining the certification process and developing integrated aerospace technologies and also examining aerospace and defense current and planned product supply chains to make sure that we're remaining competitive and have the things that we need, like our rare earths and other things, in order to do production here in the United States, and rolling back restricted export controls so that our companies can go out and be global leaders. All right, next slide.
Yeah, so we don't have any in R&D. There's no pertinent legislation right now. To be honest, this is the start of a new Congress, and that is not uncommon. But there have been hundreds of bills introduced, but that relate to our sector, our industry. There are very few right now, and the primary focus at the beginning of this new Congress has been the American Rescue Plan and Senate confirmations for the Biden administration's appointments. So not a lot has passed and not a lot has been introduced in this area, but there will be in the future.
Yeah,
Right.
and Steve, I'm going to go to the Q&A real quick. We've got one question on engaging OMB staffers and National Academy of Sciences staffers. Can you talk just briefly about AIAA's interactions there?
Yeah, OMB, we usually do more with Congress than we do with the federal agencies, and the federal agencies that we do have relationships with, they are primarily those where we have members and work a lot with, that being NASA, the FAA, DOD. OMB is one of those agencies where it's great to have a relationship, but that is one we don't have a strong relationship with. Others that are other agencies that are important, the NSF definitely, and the Office of Science and Technology Policy that is directly falls under the White House, and actually the director of the OSTP, that position has been elevated in this administration to be part of the cabinet. So that's going to be an office where we will definitely be hopefully closely tied with and engaged with when it comes to drafting science and technology policy this administration.
Okay, very good. Now, another question that we have here in the Q&A is, are we asking lawmakers to co-sponsor and support these bills?
No, I would just encourage you, the reason we do the pertinent legislation is to show you that there are lawmakers addressing some of these important issues. I would stick to the key issues themselves, the recommendations, and not venture too far into specific bills, because what we're doing here is introducing AIAA to many new offices, but also letting them know that these critical areas, and you're not going to go through all these key issues in your meeting. Please understand that. You need to remember that you should only focus on one or two main issues, especially the executive summary, because that is pertinent to every meeting. But you're not going to get through everything else, but tailor to that office. If there's a member that doesn't have much aerospace in their district, it doesn't have a research lab or research university or anything like that, but they do care maybe about workforce issues, you can definitely stress that, the importance of STEM education. But per our state fact sheets, aerospace is everywhere. Aerospace, the supply chain affects jobs across the country and households across the country. So no matter if they don't have a major company, a NASA center or whatever it may be in their district, aerospace jobs affect their districts.
Okay, thank you. I'm seeing in the chat a little bit, there's a little confusion about authorizations versus appropriations. Continuing resolutions are related to appropriations, not authorizations. There are many agencies in the federal government that are operating outside of a current authorization. And it does not affect them in the way that they can maintain current operations because it is not a funding piece of legislation. Okay, next slide. Oh, nope, we're there. Research and development and innovation. So we want to encourage investment in aerospace and defense research and development to protect jobs now and provide opportunity for future employment, and to sustain into the future U.S. leadership position in aerospace aviation. And that gets done through long-term federal research and technology initiatives, incentives for research by large corporations and small businesses. So encouraging folks to make those big investments, and by the federal government's aerospace and defense product development process. We would love for that to be streamlined so that we are tailoring our risk acceptance to better align with potential benefits and timeliness and life cycle cost management. We also want to invest in the tools and processes that support the drive and innovation, advancing research into new technologies and development into new aerospace and defense products, like sustaining infrastructure, accelerating innovation technology transition, and re-energizing small businesses through SBIR. All right, next slide.
So the one bill that's been introduced related to this area that I've tracked is this Innovation Centers Acceleration Act. Obviously, $80 billion investment. That's a lot of money in 9 centers, and that I think is again, our position here is investing in the tools and processes that support innovation and advancing research into new technologies and development. This parlays into that. I think that's a direct relation. Again, we are not, AIAA needs to be very cautious. We need board support when it comes to endorsing specific legislation, but this is one of those bills that kind of is related to our key issues here when we're asking for Congress to support investments in R&D. Okay.
All right, very good. All right, our final policy pillar, workforce development enhancement. We want to make sure that we are developing a robust STEM pipeline involving public-private partnerships and rebuilding our nation's K-12 educational process to make sure that we are churning out folks that are excited about going into aerospace and defense. And that it gets done by passing legislation such as the Higher Education Act that advances the pipeline of STEM competent workers into the U.S. economy, and by encouraging recruitment of professional development of K-12 STEM teachers through federal incentives, increased salaries, improved working conditions and grants. So giving those teachers an opportunity to thrive, and also increasing grants to minority serving institutions to get those underserved areas engaged in developing workforce for our craft here, and encouraging support for professional societies as sources of knowledge, career growth, organizations with this direct connection drive STEM-related recommendations. It said you are the sum of the 5 people you spend your most time around, and so providing those opportunities for collaboration and getting together. And finally, supporting development of workforce for all skill types and stages of career to advance learning commensurate with tech and product advancement. Promoting training and educational opportunities, incentivizing military personnel transitioning from the military into civilian workforce by standardizing the process, making sure those skills translate into the industry, and then passing visa legislation that welcomes and retains highly educated international professionals who want to work in STEM careers here in the United States. We invest a lot in folks that take that knowledge back home. We want to make sure that we can keep as much as we can here. Examples for public-private partnerships for STEM education that we can talk about. Steve, do you have any examples that we should be talking about? That's in the Q&A.
For public-private partnerships in STEM, I do not have any off the top of my head right now. I do have the pertinent legislation that I want to get through, and we have a lot of slides to get through, and that's why we've reserved some time for Q&A as we get through the do's and don'ts sections too. So I want to make sure we get through these slides so we can get to our guests soon.
Sounds good. Tim said he'd like to answer that one, and we'll do that one in the Q&A section at the end.
Okay. So for really quickly, when it comes to pertinent legislation, there's Congress, a lot of lawmakers are very interested in workforce training, STEM education. There are been several bills that have been introduced on the preparation to diversity side of our key issues. I'm not going to go through them all. These have all been introduced. Nothing has passed yet. I will say these are 3 bills. There are 3 other bills, some related to apprenticeships, some for rural education. A lot of these bills were introduced in the previous Congress. I know Eddie Bernice Johnson introduced the STEM Opportunities Act last Congress. It didn't make it out of committee, but these are very good bills that, we are, from a perspective at AIAA, we are very pleased with the number of bills that have been introduced so far, and Congress needs to try to, get many of these passed to ensure that we are strengthening our STEM pipeline. One thing I would mention too, and when it comes to authorization bills or large pieces of legislation, you see a lot of these bills that are introduced separately, but they get packaged into larger bills. So for instance, anything related to NASA, if there's a STEM education bill that's been introduced separately, if they are going to try to pass a NASA authorization bill this year or next year, they may tuck that piece of legislation as a provision into the larger bill, and that's how it can get passed. They use these drivers to make it these large packages that will likely get through the full Congress, and they, these members of Congress try to tuck them in as either amendments or into the initial legislation. So there's a lot of bills here that relate to STEM education. That's great news. Foreign-born professionals, obviously the president, immigration is a key issue, platform issue for him. And there is an act that's already been introduced addressing many immigration issues. In particular, this one, H1b visas. There's a lot of foreign students that come here and are educated here, and companies hire, and we want to retain those types of foreign-born professionals. And H1b visas are for those highly skilled workers. So this particular bill has a provision that the caps, the number of caps would be exempted here. So I also know there was a final rule in the Trump administration addressing the H1B selection process. And that's something that's within the Department of Homeland Security right now. And two members of Congress, Chuck Grassley from Iowa and Dick Durbin from Illinois, are encouraging the department to retain and implement that rule. So these are just some examples of that type of legislation relating to our key issues and our primary recommendations. I want to quickly get through these as well. We have these are separate issues that may come up in your conversations. The privatization of the International Space Station, that was, I left this in here because we were going to possibly, that was possibly up for consideration last Congress. And I just, if you're asked these questions, I want you to review the language here and have that in your back pocket. You may not get asked these questions, but I just want you to have that ammunition. And it's important from our standpoint that we can't lose that capability, the International Space Station, for conducting all that research. So if there is plans, and there are plans to have private stations up there, the current station needs to have its authorization extended. All right, and that's vital to any sort of NASA authorization bill that gets introduced and necessarily passed by Congress. There would likely be an extension of the International Space Station. Right now, I believe it's 2024 when it's the current expiration date on it. That's going to need to be continued much further while these other private stations are being developed. The Space Force, obviously, that's now I think it's we've just passed its first year since being determined a new military branch. The Biden administration has accepted the Space Force as a useful branch of the military and is not going to change that. But it's still being stood up, and there's a lot of funds that need to go toward it. There's a lot of organizational issues to address. But we're taking a slightly modest position here. But we have forums, our defense forum, our Ascend event, where we want to be seen as a technical resource for this branch and have these kind of discussions with the branch's leadership. So understand these two broad issue areas, and if asked, have this in your back pocket. A couple other issues. Advanced air mobility, also, there are several other acronyms, UAM, eVTOL. I've kind of given a general definition here that we use. It's, basically this new technical advancement in transportation for aviation to get around either urban areas or even rural areas. And it's something that we see as a critical developing topic within the Institute. We are part of an Air Mobility Council addressing, working with other societies and associations on this topic. And one piece of legislation that has been introduced is to have a kind of an interagency process with government agencies to work with the aviation sector, the industry, in developing sensible policies related to air mobility. So I wanted to bring this to your attention. Sustainability. This is also very important, a separate topic from our key issues. The Institute is very involved now. We've had some program related to sustainability. A lot of our corporate members in aviation, the Boeing, the Airbuses, the GE Aviation, Rolls-Royce, many others are addressing, working on new technologies and trying to meet a net zero decarbonization goal of 2050. We have had a webinar on this topic that took place on February 8th. I encourage you to watch it if this is something of interest to you, where they addressed a lot of the technologies, the workforce issues, the policy implications, all that needs to go into achieving that goal. We're going to have a policy-related webinar on this soon in late April, where we're going to have somebody from the House Science Committee, NASA AR&D, the FAA, to talk through these policy areas. And there's also been a bill introduced recently by Julia Brownwell from Southern California that addresses providing incentives, and that's something of interest to us to help reduce the aviation sector's carbon emissions. So sustainability could be a topic that comes up. If it does, mention our webinar that we've had on February 8th, the upcoming policy webinar on 26th of April. And then we also have a new information paper on this subject that is on the AIAA website, and you should definitely share that with those offices. Okay, a couple more things. The American Rescue Plan I mentioned earlier, that is being signed into law today. It provides critical aid to our industry. There's a provision in there that I mentioned before, providing support and a cost-sharing program with the government to help aviation workforce not be those employees not risk of being furloughed or laid off. Their small businesses are going to receive upwards of $7.25 billion through the Paycheck Protection Program. That's important because the aviation industry, the aerospace industry is made up, our supply chain, of many, many small businesses. So this is very helpful. AIAA is actually issuing a press statement on this, on the passage of this law. So you may want to look to that as well. Now, that's great news. Again, we're in a new Congress, but there's a lot for this Congress to do. Passing the appropriations bills, all of them, on time. That rarely happens anymore. I don't since the late 90s. So especially this year, we're getting a very late start. We haven't even seen the Biden administration's appropriations, his request. So Congress is going to have to move very quickly this summer to hold their hearings and consider their own appropriations. And we will likely have a delayed process again, but it's critical for Congress to get to regular order and pass these on time, because delays affect government programs, especially these long lead programs for the aerospace sector, defense programs, NASA programs, whatever they may be. Any gap in government shutdown, continuing resolution where they're money from last year's appropriations, that is not good for these long lead programs. Pass a long-term NASA authorization bill, defense authorization bill that is usually addressed on an annual basis. That's important for that to get done as well. Reauthorizing the Higher Education Act, that hasn't been done in a very long time. There's been several extensions. And then those STEM bills we talked about earlier, they need further consideration. And then continued pandemic relief. Going back to our executive summary, we need to continue to address the needs of the aerospace industry and our supply chain. The pandemic is really wreaking havoc on a lot of sectors, especially ours. There's going to need to be continued support. The aerospace industry has got us through a lot of crises in the past. It will get us through this one. It has been. It's been delivering PPP. It's been delivering vaccines. We've been using our factories to develop that PPE and whatnot. We are here for the country, but also we got to remember, if we want to be a leader in this area after the pandemic, there's many allies and adversaries wanting to take over that leadership role when it comes to aerospace. we need the support from our lawmakers. So that's all I have. Matt, you have about 15 minutes to get through your slides. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so now we're going to get into a little bit more of the nuts and bolts of the meetings and resources available to you. What you're seeing on the slide now is the outreach docs that are available. So these are all found on the webpage, aiaacv.org/CVD. The 2021 key issues, you should all have that, be studying it and reading it. If you haven't yet, please go in there, spend some time this weekend, read through them, become familiar with them, because this is the basis of our presentation. As we mentioned earlier, the only thing we're there to discuss are these key issues that were approved by the board. These are the messages that have been crafted carefully such that they support the industry at large and all our corporate members and all our members at large. So please make sure you're familiar with those and have a copy of them. Also included is Aerospace fact sheet. I'm going to talk about that on the next slide in a minute. But first, also on the webpage is a wide variety of information papers. I think we also have those on a coming slide. These aren't things that you'll bring into your meeting to discuss. We'll focus on the key issues, but you should be aware of what's out there and what exists. As you go through the key issues, you'll notice some references on the bottom. Usually those references point to one of those information papers for you to go and get more information if you need it. And then, of course, if the offices you meet with ask for information on other topics, some of those may be included in the information sheets, and then you can use that as a follow-up after your meeting. So let's go ahead to the next slide. Aerospace fact sheets. So these are also available to you. Your state captains should have one. We have one for virtually every state plus DC and Puerto Rico. The value of the fact sheet is twofold. One, it goes through a lot of information about the value of aerospace to your particular states. It has a lot of the information that you see here, the number of jobs, how much aerospace supports the economy, as major corporations in the area. Many representatives might not know, especially if they're new, how large aerospace contributes to their local economy. So that's an important thing to share. This should be something that's shared in every one of your meetings. You want to hit that cover page, that's very important, and you want to hit the aerospace fact sheet. And so additionally, these are files that you can send that you should have sent in advance to your offices. There's still time to do it. And one of the benefits of it, it also includes our AIAA brand on it. It includes Steve Sidoric's contact information. So it's a great thing for them to have on their desk or have in their office. So please make sure you highlight that and get that into their hands. And then again, please, this weekend or as you prepare for your meetings, read through there and make sure you have somebody on your team who's prepared to go through that information and deliver it. Let's go to the next one. Okay, these are the information papers and the platform papers I mentioned earlier. There's a lot of valuable information in there. I don't think you need to go through there and memorize those for your meetings, but you should familiar yourself with what's available to the offices. So I've been in meetings where they've asked for information on supersonic flight over land. We don't necessarily have that as one of the key issues this year, but if they ask, you can go find that information and provide it to them. The other benefit of having something like this is when they ask you for information, it gives you an opportunity to follow up outside of CVD. So your contact with the offices goes from one meeting to now a follow-up or two or three or a discussion. And these are the ways that we build relationships with the offices and overall get them on board with the organization and what we're recommending. Let's go to the next one. Okay, there are other policy products available. Steve mentioned a couple of them. We've got the Space Policy Pod, 18 episodes. They're all available on the webpage also. So it's a good source to get relevant information about what's currently going on with space policy. That's something the offices might be interested in. Also, we conduct an Aerospace 101 and other congressional briefings. Those are also available on our webpage. So you may want to know that they're available or let the offices know that they're available and they can reach out to them. Also, make sure that they know that we don't just do CVD, we don't just publish the key issues, we produce these as resources, and we'll have webinars and other things for the congressional staff over the course of the year. So if they're interested in getting involved with that, they should be contacted by Steve, but they could always reach out directly as well. So part of the message that we're sharing is that we are a resource to their offices. So as they want to learn more, these are some of the sources of information we can provide to them. So be aware of that. Okay. we're trying to share the key issues. I mentioned that first and foremost, that's a big deal. What's also a big deal is that we're not here to promote our programs, our companies. We're not trying to sell products. These starts graying the line between what's legal for us to do and what's not legal for us to do. And again, we have a very broad industry with a lot of different organizations, and many of them are on different sides of the aerospace industry, sometimes competing. So it's very important that we share a message that supports all our corporate members, that supports all our membership. And the key issues have been carefully crafted to do that. So please stick to that. If there's a problem there, that's the type of thing that will get you uninvited to see CVD. So please be very careful about that. We want to explain why those key issues are relevant not only to the country, but also to our states. And that's where the state fact sheets come in. The officers should know that you represent a large number of constituents in their area. And these meetings help us do that. We're hoping that through those discussions about what's going on in the state and what's going on at the national level, that we can develop relationships with these offices and then help them be successful. So we want to ask and get feedback from them. What information can we provide to the office to support them? What are the things that this particular representative is looking to accomplish, and how can we be part of that? We can be a resource, and opening up those lines of communication and providing feedback is one way that we can build long-term relationships with these offices and staffers, so that ultimately we can be effective with our aerospace policy advancement. Another thing to keep in mind is, as we meet these representative staffers and legislative assistants, and even the representatives themselves, so we never know exactly where they're going to go next year and the year after that. So someone we could be talking to today might find themselves in a very powerful or significant office in the near future. So building those relationships at every level is very important. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so this is something specifically for the state captains. Please make sure that either you or someone on your team, after every meeting, goes to this link here and fills out the survey. I would encourage you to go there in advance and see the type of information that we're looking for. We've got a couple of them highlighted in the bullets here. Particularly, this is the method by which that we are going to track our successfulness and track our ability to get the message out. So we're looking for information about, how many states participated, how many different districts did we talk to, how many different key issues did we address, which ones were the most popular. There's a spot on there to provide feedback, which helps us keep track of which offices are looking for which information, so that we can then provide that as we follow up. And then overall, as an organization, it helps us to understand how effective we are from year to year, and then how that effectiveness is changing, hopefully trending in the better direction. So the state captain doesn't have to do it himself. You can assign somebody on your team to have the form open and start checking the boxes and filling out the information as you go. My recommendation would be to do that immediately following the meeting. But please look in advance to make sure that you are collecting that data and get that submitted, I would say no later by the end of next week, the 19th. We want to get it while it's fresh in our minds and we don't forget anything. Let's go next. Okay, so we want to document the event. If you have an opportunity to take a screenshot, please ask in advance if the office wouldn't mind if you take screenshots of the meeting. Normally, this is an opportunity on the Hill to take pictures with our representatives at the Capitol and other things. We usually do tweets as we go through. Understanding that this is a fully virtual event, our ability to do that will be limited. But we still want to take advantage of that. So please look for opportunities to take pictures or screenshots with the staff, and use the AIAA hashtag, AIAA CVD as we go. Let's get that out there and get the organization and our members aware of all the good work that we're doing. Let's go to the next one. Okay, so each one of you that have registered for this event will get an invitation to a survey in your email. Please respond to it. This is an opportunity then for us to track what sort of things can we do better in the future? How can we make this more effective? Any feedback that you have on how we're doing or how this event went, particularly because this is the first virtual one, we're really looking for that information. So if you could all be very responsive to that and fill out the survey and give us some feedback, we'd appreciate that. Steve, I don't know if you have anything you want to add to that.
This is different this year. Normally we send it out through SurveyMonkey, but AIAA is using McKinley Advisors for a lot of our products, including our forums, to gather a lot of metrics so we can improve our programs. And that's exactly what we do with these survey responses. We've made modifications to the CVD program over the years based on feedback from the surveys. One of which was the do's and don'ts skits that we're going to do later on today. How we conduct our receptions and whatnot, trainings. So it's very important if you participate in this event to submit that. It's a short survey, it shouldn't take you very long, but we do need that information. And in the public policy committee, we're going to develop a report, and actually that's going to be shared with the Dan Dunbacher and our board of trustees, so they can see how, the metrics of the program, what we've learned this year, especially in a virtual environment. If we're going to do hybrid going forward, we need to know, what worked, what didn't work in this virtual environment. That's going to be essential this year. Other than that, my contact information there, if you need it, you should have your contact information for your state captains. One thing I mentioned earlier about the American Rescue Plan I want to address, and we have a statement, and AIAA is appreciative of the support for the industry in the bill, and there's going to need to be more. But we need to be mindful that bill passed along party lines. No Republican in either the House or the Senate voted for that. So I don't want state teams to run into their meetings and say, thank you so much for passing the American Rescue Plan. This is helpful. You got to be mindful that, no Republicans supported it. So I would not start off with that or even really mention it in a meeting with a Republican member of Congress. It's just, you got to be mindful of these things when you're having your meetings. Stick to the key issues if possible. Like that's why they're very vanilla, a little bit broad. We want to make sure that we're addressing all the needs for the whole community. With that, I thank you, Robert and Matt, for going through all that information. There was a lot there. We do have a guest speaker now. I want to welcome, and it's Kate Cron Miller, Vice President of Government Relations for Jacobs. Kate has been in this town for a long time. It deals a lot with members of Congress, has built a lot of great relationships up there, and with NASA especially. And she has some valuable information to share with all of you. And we will have, again, some time for questions that we'll try to address at the end. She does have some slides I do want to share with that. So Kate, I believe you're on. Are you? Yep. Great. Thank you again, Kate. We really appreciate you being here. So let me share your screen, your slides.
Okay, well, thank you, Steve.
Great.
And
there you go.
Good afternoon, everyone. I appreciate the invitation to discuss how we've adjusted to virtual advocacy. The good news is it seems to be working. Next slide. I'm going to let my colleague and expert staffer, Rick Poliska, expand upon my observations. But recently, I think we have had the largest supplier fly-in for our team, SLS, Orion, and EGS. And I'm here to report that it was a really good experience. I was quite nervous because of the size of the participation and also the number of meetings we had set up. But the staffers seemed very focused during our Zoom discussions. They didn't have anybody interrupting them. They didn't have to go stand in the hallway because somebody was in their office. It was an interesting exercise for me to observe because most of the staffers are still working at home. And so the good news is they were very focused. The bad news is some of them had unstable Wi-Fi. And so I just wanted to mention that if a member or staffer's screen all of a sudden goes black, keep talking because they're there. It's just what we're dealing with in this virtual format. So I think it has allowed many suppliers who normally can't fly and take 3 days off from their small business to come walk around Capitol Hill with folks like me and Robert and Steve and others and go from the House to the Senate or put up with snowstorms or rainstorms or whatever. And so suppliers who normally don't come and normally don't participated this year. And I looked at that as a real step in the right direction because the more small businesses and the more students, the more people you can get to participate in your congressional visit day, the better. And it's also good because then the members and their staffers see that there's a groundswell of support from their district or state, and it's just not 3 or 4 people. And I think I look at this as a growth opportunity. And I also think that it's going to stay around. I don't think it's going to go away. I think it'll be a hybrid mode going forward. Some of them will be in person and some of them will be virtual. But the good news is we can go year round to the offices. And so I have worked on supplier conferences since 1990 something. And, you know, people fly in for a few days, they go and do these visits, but then they don't visit the staffers or the members again for a year. This way, because it's Zoom, you can set it up. And one of the things that I observed, we did our thank yous, and good on you for setting a deadline for when those had to be done and the follow-up notes achieved. But we're following up with a lot of the district directors. And so folks who are in the district, you can get their contact information off of the website. And again, I'll let Rick talk about this, but the district directors are their members now because of the pandemic. And so if you're used to only dealing with the Space LA or the Defense LA, add the district director or whoever they designate in the district office to your contact plan, because they're very, very engaged these days. Next slide. So this is the new normal. I wanted to use this. I do appreciate the fact that you warned everyone to request permission to take a screenshot, because grabbing a screenshot is sometimes difficult. And as you can see, and Congressman Cartwright is letting me say this, they don't always look right at the camera. And so you need to warn them so that they can have a picture that they're proud to see in your newsletter or wherever you're going to post it. But I do think this is our picture from a recent fly-in, and it was really interesting to see how many members had the flexibility to join our meetings who weren't scheduled to be in our meetings. Because they were virtual, if something changed on the House floor schedule, they could just get in and participate along with their staff. And that is the new normal. And I think it's a good thing. I also was warning my folks, because you can see there's a person missing in the far left corner. That was one of my guys who didn't practice with his screen beforehand. And so he wasn't visible on camera. And so all of us are learning, and I have made my own mistakes along the way, believe me, but do practice in advance. Next slide. Have a plan on what you're going to do when you get on the call, and plan 15 minutes. I know I've always been planning 30 minutes. That's not the way it's happening with Zoom. You really need to have the team leader determine how they're going to do the introductions, who's going to say what first, who's going to do the requests that you have, and who's going to do the follow-up. And you know, it's fine if many people do the follow-up, but what's really tough and what really doesn't work well is when there's no plan on who's speaking first, or there's no team leader identifying someone on the screen, and folks start talking over each other, and then you can't hear anything. And because we can't look at each other across the table or, you know, read each other's body language, it's really, really imperative that you plan ahead. And if you have the time, please practice. So this is a picture of a shuttle commander, wonderful man, Andy Allen, who put up with me because I made him practice, and put him through training before I let him get on screen. And, you know, he's done this for 30 plus years. There's not much Andy can't do. And after it was over, he said, wow, that was really helpful. I had no idea how different it would be, and how you have to really understand this format and make sure that you have all of your ducks in order and you know what to say and when to say it. So all I can say is, you know, be prepared and know who you're talking to, and make sure that if you have a chance, you practice. Next slide. Okay. And again, I'm going to let my colleague Rick expand, but please do your homework. Understand who you're talking to. I know Steve earlier mentioned don't thank Republicans for passing the American Rescue Plan because none of them voted for it. Good advice, Steve, very good advice. But there's also other things you can look at, and their web pages are full of great data, but know if they're on the Small Business Committee, because if they're on the Small Business Committee, that may be your guideline to have a small business speak first or talk about the small businesses. If they're interested in STEM, that'll be on their website. Have one of your student participants talk about what they're studying and why they're studying it and why it's beneficial. The other thing is, there are folks who really pay attention to what's going on in their local community. So if you have a group that is doing something with a local college or a local high school, highlight it. I mean, try and be very specific about the good news and how you're helping them and helping their community. Because I always say it's SPIT, specific, personal, information, and timely, informative and timely. So you spit at them and don't do that. But when you talk to them, think about it. And don't get down in the weeds and don't try and describe how your engine works unless it's committee staff. Be relevant to them and, make sure you do an immediate follow-up. But we all know how to say our name, why we're there, what we want. As they want. And so, try and make it relevant to them so that they want to spend the time and make it important to the district. And then remember to follow up. So next page. Avoid bloopers. I know that my guys were not happy when I asked to use this picture, but you can see we had a team who was working on their cell phones while talking. And that doesn't sell well. You need to look in the camera and you need to give them your full time and attention. The other thing you don't want to do is have posters in your background that are political or inappropriate. You can see my background, it's really boring, but boring is much better than offensive. So think about where you're sitting and what's behind you. And I only say this because I've seen some major mistakes made, and you might not realize how someone's going to react to something. So just try not to have biased materials on screen with you. Also, you're going to be briefing both R's and D's. So good advice, Steve, keep it apolitical. And do not use the chat to send private messages. I've seen folks thinking they were sending private messages, and the messages went out to the staffers and the members and all the participants, and they were not good messages. And I wouldn't use the chat. I would avoid doing it if you can. And then my final is wear pants. No joke. There have been people who are, I'm sure they're in bathing suits or shorts, but they have ties and suit coats on, and they'll stand up and reach over to pick up something, and you'll see that they're not wearing pants. It happens. It's okay. I've had cats jump on screens. I've had kids scream in the background. Those are fine. People are used to that. This is a Zoom environment. But just make sure that you're appropriately attired and that you think about what you're doing. And if you happen to have, like I do, I have a powder room. I don't know if you can see the door behind me. That's a bathroom. I would recommend not allowing your family members to use it when you're on screen. It doesn't make for a very good exchange of information. So I'm happy to answer any questions you have, and thank you once again for this opportunity.
That was great, Kate. Very helpful. And the point you made about the chat function, I agree with that entirely, which is why, even through this, we wanted people to use Q&As for their questions. The chat, you don't know who you're sending it to sometimes, and we don't want to have any of those situations where it goes out to all participants when it's meant for just one. So we will cover that in the do's and don'ts. Another couple points you made, the fact that engaging the district directors, I think that is very good advice. Something that has changed in this virtual environment for sure. And all you across the country, all you AIAA members, your local representative, they have a district office, they have a district director. They have, many of their staffers handle casework, but in these times, they're having to staff the congressman a lot more because they're working from home and they're gonna need to address some of these issues. So we don't want CVD to be a 1 week this year event. We always encourage our members to be everyday advocates, to engage these lawmakers when they're back in their districts throughout the year. They still have the congressional calendar where they're home a lot in August. They're home for recesses spread throughout the calendar year. So that's a great time to meet with them. And then it's encouraging also to hear that a lot of members are available to take part in these types of meetings, which is why we always strive to have our constituents, our members who are constituents of this particular representative to schedule a meeting. That's important information to the congressional office because they want to hear their constituents, and most times they want to meet with their constituents, including the members. So that's encouraging. Hopefully all of you will be meeting with many members next week, and maybe that's a major positive for this year, even though it's a virtual environment, we're not here in DC, that you will be seeing members more so than you would here. I am trying to see if there are any questions for Kate, particularly. I do not see any. We do have Rick on the line here. We're going to get started with his presentation. One question that's come in is that AIAA have its own CVD Zoom background that we can use. Tim, you were going to answer that. We do have that. I tend not to use that background myself because it does create, if you have backgrounds, you see a lot of the movements and whatnot. It gets a little blurry, and that it takes a little bit more bandwidth in your Zoom connection. So I prefer not to. We really share that with your AIAA staff, but we have not provided that to members, and I would prefer just to have a normal background like Kate is suggesting in a proper environment, and being as professional as possible.
We've had some bandwidth problems, and when people use their background, it really is detrimental. And a lot of times staffers are working at home, and I'll let Rick go into this, but if you're in an area where you have unstable Wi-Fi, that's not a good idea to use a background.
Yeah. Right. Even right now, I'm in my basement. I normally would be in my office, but I know my connection is not as good in my office, especially for these larger group meetings when we have a lot on Zoom at one time. So that's why I'm down here. I don't have the best background because I have a bunch of sun coming in my windows, but I'm trying to be in a place where I do have a better connection. Tim, do you have anything to add or any questions for Kate being our chair?
No, Kate, I just want to thank you. Some of the comments in the chat that we're receiving, they're some of the best, I think, recommendations for and advice for CVD that we've ever had for this group. So especially some of these bloopers and things like that. Absolutely. Amazing advice. And just want to thank you for coming on today to share your advice with us.
Happy to help.
And again, I am still getting a few people that are raising their hands. Please enter your question. We cannot hear you on this side of it, even if I addressed you for raising your hand. So if you have a question, please enter it in the Q&A box, and then we will try to address it there. All right, well, I guess unless we have anything else, Kate, this was very helpful. I'm glad you had that SLS Suppliers Conference recently, because that is definitely beneficial advice for us as we hold our fly-in here. Thank you again for all that you do for the aerospace community, and thank you for joining us. We really appreciate this. Was great advice. All right, and with that, and Kate, you're welcome to stay on. It's up to you if you want to listen to Rick. Rick is up next. Rick Podliska from Congressman Bill Posey's office. He's a senior policy advisor for the congressman. Congressman Posey represents the Space Coast in Florida. So Rick meets with our types quite a lot. So Rick, obviously we want you to kind of share that staff experience, right? Because you're meeting with us on a regular basis. What we should be doing to engage staff and really, help you guys do your jobs up there on the Hill.
Thanks, Steve. First of all, I want to thank you for this invitation to participate in the AIAA. And I apologize for any background noise here. I'm in the office today, so
Tell Stuart to keep it down back there.
he's in the next room over, but you might pop in. I'm not sure. So I was asked about how does an average meeting go, right? Hey, hang on a sec. I apologize, guys. How an average meeting goes. So let's see here. So you schedule, and just getting on the schedule is also a big deal too, because it's not just your group. It's many groups trying to get schedule a time, and and we only have so much time. So especially when we're that staffer actually handles committee responsibilities too. So you got to factor all the committee schedule in, voting schedule, because the priority for the staffer is to help the member with their committee and the voting on the floor. So it just limits the time to schedule a meeting. But once you do get a meeting, the average meeting goes, the staffer might only have 15, maybe 20 minutes because there's other staffers, it's usually a back-to-back day of meetings. So what I recommend is to get the ask, what are you there for, out early. So I would know how I can help and how the congressman actually can help you, see if they're on the same wavelength. And so get the ask out early in the meeting. And then also, and Kate mentioned this in her presentation, is to do your homework. Go on the Congress's website, check out their press releases, recent legislation they dropped, as well as their social media accounts, their Twitter, Facebook. You're going to know where they're coming from. And so if there's an agenda item on your ask list that may not be in sync with their priorities, I this is just my advice. I wouldn't bring it up. Go to the second or third agenda items. Find common ground. Once you find the common ground, then those are the areas that we can probably work with you and your group. And because you don't want to waste my time, your time. Let's just get to the point, how we can help each other. And then, so that's what I highly recommend. Also, and Kate also mentioned this too, is work toward being a resource, build relationships. Because Steve mentioned this is not just a one-time business arrangement. This is going to be over time. You got appropriations, you got authorizations. There will always be something that your organization wants. And by building relationships up with that office staff as well as the member, you're going to accomplish your goals in the long term. Also, I asked be honest. Once there's a problem about the information not being accurate, you may not get another meeting, or we won't rely on you as being a resource. That's huge in our book because we don't have much time, and there's so many other groups who are trying to have interactions with us. So once I realize that this person or this group is not being honest, I'm going to try and probably won't reschedule, or I won't, I always have to take their information with a grain of salt. So be honest and explain both sides of the issue, because we're going to find out anyway. So just be honest, explain both sides. Also, let's see here, what else, delivering a message. This is also important. Relate your ask to why it's important to the member's district. Is it jobs? Is it a new program that's going to be part of the Space Coast? Something that's unique or that's relevant to that member's district. because you got to tie it in. Why are you here? Why do you want the congressman's help? This is going to be important to the congressman's district because of X. I mean, that's it's be very helpful. It also makes the staffer more inclined to act on your ask, to bring it up the chain, get approval, actually act on whatever it may be, introducing legislation, signing on to letters, or even staying off a legislation, if that's helpful. Also, let's see here. I would definitely get to know, Kate mentioned this also, is know the members' committee assignments. Because if you're asking the congressman to do something regarding transportation, and the congressman doesn't serve on transportation committee, it might be more beneficial to approach a member that's on the transportation committee, but at the same time, the member, since it might be relevant to that congressman's district, he could reach out to another member on that committee that you also may have ties or direct ties with. And so we create a coalition on the outside and on the Hill to maybe introduce legislation, hopefully a bipartisan legislation, as well as joint letters. It helps everybody out. And then I was asked about, let's see here, what not to do in the meeting. Okay, I went and talked politics. And then also check, like this goes back to your research, your homework, is to check how strong of opposition that member may have with one of your agenda items. If you're, like I said, if it's not gonna go anywhere, I wouldn't even mention it. Go to your second or third agenda. And then, like I said, work to go find a common area. This is where you get the most success. And also don't mention anything, since we're dealing with federal property, even when we're talking about on Zoom calls and we're in our homes, I wouldn't mix official meeting business with unofficial business. That's a big no-no too. And also, any stories I can share that would be, I mean, I've been around the block or two on the Hill here. I'm 15 years on Capitol Hill now. It's my second stint. I did have I had a gap there. I was on the other side. I was a lobbyist. So I had experience on both sides of the table. But so I have stories from the lobbyist perspective as well as the Hill staffer. Let's see here. Oh, geez. I would say, when I went to a meeting with this one group, I knew we weren't in sync with the member priorities, but we found common ground, and now it's let's just say it's a great success story with one that's an entire industry in the Congress's district right now, and I think it works for both of us now. So I won't say the industry just because but I mean, I like to go in with the positive outlook and keep my options open to see how we can help each other out. I guess, I mean, I can questions or.
Yeah, Rick, thanks for that. I appreciate all those points. One in particular that stuck out to me and something we should be advising as well is looking at the social media pages. It's not just the members' website and the pertinent legislation that they have listed or press releases, but the social media. Every member of Congress has a dedicated social media person these days, and they are active on getting the messages out there about the great things that the member has done, that they support, so what they don't support. So it's important for, I think, teams as they go into their meetings next week to look to those social media accounts, especially Twitter, I would say, more so than Facebook these days. But your boss will have definitely, I'm sure, had a tweet about the American Rescue Plan or any bill that is pending before the House Science Committee, because your boss sits on the House Science Committee. So it's important to know that bit of background. I would also say not addressing a particular topic where there may be some sort of disagreement or the member is not in favor of our position, and moving on to the next issue. That's a
Yeah.
good point as well.
The article?
That's why we have plenty of key
It's,
issues here that are very broad. We're not, obviously, we're a very objective,
I think the strongest one.
biased organization. We don't promote any particular program or any particular corporate member because we have a lot of them. And as I said before, some are on different sides of the fence on a particular issue or a program. So a lot of our issues are pretty broad, but there are issues that will be more important to a particular member than they will another member. As Kate mentioned, if they're on the small business committee, you want to kind of address that type of issue. Hey, the American Rescue Plan did have funds set aside for these small businesses, PPP support. So, I mean, that's something, again, be mindful of what party they are on too. But I think trying to establish those connections, I think the conversations will go further. And what do you think, Brick? I know Kate mentioned, you're only going to really get 15 minutes these days in the Zoom environment. Is that true?
Well, it depends. Yeah, it depends. It depends on the. Yeah, it depends on the issue. If it's a high priority, you probably devote a little more time. But mainly 15 minutes, 20 minutes. That's probably the average meeting time. I think anything over 15 minutes, or that's kind of a, those are rare. Those are, yeah.
All right. So is the congressman engaging in a lot of these virtual meetings if he has the time available now?
Oh yeah. Just yesterday, he was going from a committee hearing to Zoom call, back-to-back Zoom calls while doing the committee hearing. So yeah. So it's almost like this virtual meeting stuff is you're expecting more to take more and more meetings than what you can do in the one-on-one in-person meetings.
Okay. And then you think from this virtual, is there anything with the virtual environment that you've seen that makes it more challenging in these meeting environments? Like normally in person you have that personal connection, right? And it's a little bit difficult through a computer screen. But is there anything you're seeing in this new virtual environment when engaging with advocates like AIAA members?
Yeah, there's technological issues like bandwidth issues. Sometimes I can't be on camera, so I'm on the phone while they're on video, and so we're talking over each other. But when you're in person, you don't have that because you have that body language, you have that interaction. But at the same time, I can probably get more meetings in with Zoom. Okay.
And how are you preferring that we share documents? So since our key issues and our state fact sheets, we have encouraged teams to provide those in advance as they make the calendar appointment. That's helpful, I'm assuming. So you can kind of gauge, all right, this discussion is going to kind of cover this area, and then that helps you prepare for any questions you may have for us, correct?
Yes, absolutely. Send your documents ahead of time, and then also, each morning I check my schedule. But I had one meeting yesterday. I found this very helpful. He about half hour before our time, he resent the documents and just as a reminder, say, hey, I look forward to meeting you in about a half hour. Here are the documents I sent you, when I scheduled the meeting, but I want you to have it at the top of your inbox. Keep in mind, we have tons of email. So anything that puts us right at the top of the inbox and, the grab easy for the meeting coming, I think I highly suggest that.
That's a good point. That's exactly what we're trying to do. We don't want to inundate you with a ton of all of our information papers because you don't need to read all of our information papers. So,
yeah.
Okay, Tim or anybody, Robert or Matt, do you have any questions or comments for Rick before we let him go? I know he's busy up there today.
No, I think that's great. Rick, thanks for joining us. And I think it is important to note is that, with everybody doing meetings all the time, usually we would go into an office and sit down and meet, and there's just going to be a lot more stuff going on in the background with these meetings. It's just the way it's going to be. So just soldier on, I guess.
Yeah, and Rick, just from AIAA's perspective, thank you very much for taking the time today. You're just like Kate. Your experience is a wealth of information, I think, for our members to learn from and really help us prepare ourselves as we go to our meetings next week.
Thanks,
I
Tim.
think, Kate, did you want to say anything while we
No,
have
I
you?
just wanted to thank Rick. He's a fabulous staffer. He always is a straight shooter. I drive him in his office crazy. And I just think that he's patient and kind and always very honest. So that's all.
Thank
you.
Just
Thank
wanted
you,
to say
Kate.
Thank you.
All right, well, I'll let you both go. Thank you very much for your time. We really appreciate it. This was helpful. So thank you again. We're a little ahead of schedule, everybody, but we do have some questions we want to get through now before we move on to the next portion of the program, our do's and don'ts. So let me get to those. Tim, were there any you wanted to address?
Yeah, sure. I can start off. So the first question that was asked was, are there examples of private public partnerships for STEM education that we can use to talk about? And I'm not sure that we know of any specifically in the education field. I think what we're trying to do with that recommendation is there are public-private partnership structures that were set up within the aerospace industry to collaborate between government and industry and develop, whether it be new propulsion systems or new applications. That's a great model that we can bring into the world of education and start looking at how we can set up partnerships between private industry and educational institutions that are government sponsored to really develop and support the future workforce. So I would approach the recommendation from that direction for that particular one.
So another one, I know some people we have members who work for government agencies and they participate in CVD. And in years past, there's always been the question about, they need to be very cautious given their role at NASA or FAA or wherever it may be, and what they're advocating for here. Now, you are here wearing your AIAA hat, and everybody is here wearing their AIAA hat. You're not here wearing your whatever company hat, whatever agency hat, whatever college hat, whatever it may be. You are representing the Institute and our key issues. You are a volunteer. You are here on your own personal time. And there's a well-established canon of the constitutional law that an individual does not relinquish his or her rights of assembly and petition upon the acceptance of public employment, and all public employees enjoy the same constitutional rights of free assembly and petition as do other citizens of the United States. In other words, you can vote for them, you can write to them, you can speak to them, as long as you are acting as a private citizen and not in an official capacity. You will not be representing NASA or whoever in these meetings. So there is no concern with, say, the Hatch Act or anything like that. I just want to make it, you are here as an AIAA volunteer. So when you walk in that door, it doesn't matter if you work for NASA or whoever. So please, we do have a letter on that. There is a separate government employee participation letter that we have too. I'm happy to share it with you. The American Society of Civil Engineers has one that we often reference as well about this type of engagement. So I'm happy to share that. If you can email me, if you want more information, I'm happy to share that. But you shouldn't feel concerned about your participation in this event if you're a government employee. What else do we have here?
Next question is, for those of you who have NASA contractors in our district, how should we deal with questions like funding for SLS versus commercial options?
We don't
Steve,
talk about funding like that. We don't talk about particular programs like that. If you stick to the key issues, you will not have any real problem here. And if you are asked a similar question about that, say, about SLS, you say, look, I'm here representing the Institute. We do have corporate members that are building the SLS rocket, that are, building the Orion capsule, but those questions I am not privy to answer, and those should be reserved to the company the contractor handling that. It's not an AIAA issue.
Well, Steve, not only do we have members that are working on SLS, but we also have members that are also working in commercial space. So AIAA actually, as a membership whole, represents all of the aerospace industry and both types of programs. So we don't pick winners and losers of particular programs. We stick to industry as a whole, what can support the industry the best.
It's really, yeah, it's not even just industry, it's the community. It's the academics, it's government, it's industry. They're the three major components here. So you're not going to get, you shouldn't be getting into those weeds. And the easy answer is, I'm here representing the AIAA, talking about these key issues. I'm a volunteer. If you have specific questions about that, you can refer them to me and I can handle it, or it's better off for a particular contractor or company. So that's the best way to kind of deflect. Where do we find what committees they serve on? I checked their website. Is it under congress.gov? Can you give insight? Okay, so the members of Congress all have their own website. It's usually their last name .senate.gov or .house.gov. On that page, now they all have their pages all look different, but each page, if you navigate, will have a biography section or about the member, and under that it has their full biography. It has usually their committee assignments, their caucus memberships, and information about the district itself, usually a map and where their district offices are. They also have a press or media page. That's where all the press statements will be listed. And then they'll have, what else is on there? I'm struggling to think of right now. They have constituent services, but we don't need that right now. If you are having trouble receiving your Social Security check, or you're having issues with your taxes, all that casework, there's a separate page for that. But really what you're going to look at is the member's biography, their committee assignments and caucus memberships, and their press release page. And then, as Rick said, look to their social, or actually Kate said, what was it, Kate or, yeah, no, Rick, look to their social media accounts to see exactly what they're doing on particular issues. Well, we need to inform Steve or any other heads of the CVD committee about potential follow-ups with staffers or members of Congress. If so, how will we need to communicate that information? That is best when you're filling out your your meeting forms after each meeting. There is we ask all the questions about who you met with, the state, what issues that you covered. Also, there's a box for feedback and list that feedback. That's the best place to insert that information. And then state captains are going to eventually, that's going to be compiled and eventually end up in my hands, the committee's hands, and we will, I will likely be the best one to respond. Now, if I would also make sure you're working directly with your state captain. If a particular team is going to respond to anything, that state captain should be responsible. And that state captain may want to copy me in that response. So if you talk about sustainability, for instance, and we have a we now have an information paper on it. You said, hey, we had this event, we had this webinar on sustainability. If they need me to send them the link, or if the state captain wants to share that link and share that information paper after the fact, please do so. But eventually that will be provided to me, and those meeting reports are essential. So please fill those out. It's easier to do them after each individual meeting, so you remember exactly what was covered and what was needed. And then you get through them. You don't have to have them all piled up at the end.
Hey, Steve, is the after meeting report, is that only in the slide deck, or has that been sent out separately to everybody else?
I believe that has been shared with the state captains.
State captains, okay.
If not, I'll send it again.
Okay. Yeah, so they have it at the top of their inbox.
Would you advise government employees to participate from home and not their work site? It's an interesting question. Again, this is something we haven't had to deal with before, but to be honest, I would probably do it from home. That's the safe bet. That way there is no conflict. If you're at your office and your boss walks in and sees that you're doing you know, your AIAA volunteer work from a company computer on company time, that could lead to problems. That would just be my advice to you. If you can do it from home, that would be preferred, because when you're here, you're not in the office, right? You're using your own leave, your vacation leave or whatever it may be, and you're not charging your company or your government customer when you're here doing CVD in person. So not doing it in your office is probably the smart move.
So Steve, there's a couple questions that have showed up in the chat. One is, what do we say as our job when introducing ourselves? You can absolutely say who you work for and that you work in their district. I mean, that's, they want to know that they're providing jobs in this industry in your district. So you can absolutely tell them who you work for. But just remember, you are there representing AIAA, though, not that organization.
Yes.
Next question was about some acronyms in the presentation. I think we can probably provide those. You can also try to Google some of those, especially in the context. Acronyms are part of the industry, but we'll try to do our best to make sure the package is updated with some explanations of the acronyms.
I'm struggling to know what those may be, actually. I'd have to look through it again.
Yep.
Somebody else asked, some offices are asking to reschedule their meetings to the week after CVD or to April. That is okay. To be honest, the meetings are important. If you are able to accommodate that reschedule as a team, that would be great. If not, it's understandable. You know, we probably won't be able to capture that information if it's in April in our reports, but that's quite all right. But as long as you're able to hold a meeting, make that connection, and be that resource for us, that's fine with me.
Yeah, I would just say make sure your state captain is aware if they aren't already part of that conversation. And state captains, please flow that information up to the regional deputy directors that you're working with, so that they can make sure that that information gets back to the committee, so we know there might be some outstanding meetings that happen a little bit later. Next question is, are we supposed to present slides of the meeting? If so, is there a template or canned package you can provide? We are not recommending you present slides. Remember, you're only going to have 15 minutes, maybe 20 to 30 minutes at most. You don't want to have to take the time to pull up slides, go through slides. This is meant to be a conversation, really just kind of introducing the topics and see where they go. If you're going to pull up anything, not that I recommend this, you can pull up the key issues that you've already sent them if you want to point to something in the key issues, since we normally do that sometimes when we're in person. But no, we are not recommending that you present slides or make slides. You want to work from the key issues document exactly as they're written. That's the content that we're supposed to be sharing.
Yeah, I would add, like as Rick said, sometimes he's like at last minute, he's going to have to take the call. He's going to have to take the meeting from his phone. He's not be able to jump on for the Zoom webinar. So you got to also, I would also encourage you all to be flexible, because if something comes up and it turns into a call and not a meeting like this, you're just gonna have to work with that. So if in that case, you wouldn't be able to use slides anyway. That's why it was important to get them the documents in advance, so you can kind of work through those.
So another question from the chat, Zoom seems a little bit more informal, business casual a lot of times. Should we suit up like in person? Absolutely, we are trying to standardize across the organization. All of our attendees, we're asking that you dress in business formal attire. So from a gentleman, that's at minimum a tie. Certainly a suit coat is recommended as well, similar to how Matt was dressed earlier today, and women accordingly from an attire standpoint. You are working professional, you're trying to represent the organization. We want to dress to impress. And so certainly treat it that way for your meetings. And also make sure, like Kate said, you're wearing pants.
Yes. And understand, again, being flexible, things are going to come up. This is we're a year into this, and people are aware that sometimes a cat walks across in front of you, or you can hear a child in the background maybe screaming. That's it is what it is. But something that we can make sure happens is being that in that professional demeanor, wearing a professional attire. That is critical. And you know, Yes, I should maybe should be wearing, if we were in person, I'd probably be wearing dress pants and a you know, button down shirt. Still in a collared shirt, but if I'm going to be meeting next week with a senator, I'm definitely wearing a shirt and tie and a jacket as a male, and you know, female dressing appropriately as well. All right, I mean, we're back on schedule now. We've covered most of the questions, right? And
Yep. So we had a
I
break
don't know
time.
if you want, everybody want to take like a very quick break. You know, I'm just going to keep this going, or we can jump right into it. I know the next thing, everybody, is for us to go through the do's and don'ts. We have some excellent skits that were put together by Robert, Melanie, Tim, Matt, and a few others. We're going to be sharing videos. And then we're going to, after each video, go to a particular slide, kind of covering what happened. So
Steve, why don't we take a 10-minute break? That brings us right up to 3 o'clock and it'll put us right on schedule.
all right, that sounds good. So everybody, you know, I'm just going to leave this going, take your break, and we'll be back here at 3 o'clock Eastern time. All right, I got 3 o'clock here on the East Coast, and we're going to get started here back. So again, we were going to, this part of the calendar, we're going to go into the do's and don'ts. We have several people tape a mock Hill meeting, both that should be performed in a professional manner and one that should not. So I'll credit Melody Grande for this. I am going to show the recordings from my laptop, so hopefully they go well. Otherwise, I may have Melanie do it. So bear with me as I try to share these videos.
And this is precisely why we are having videos and stuff. For
Yeah, I've never really done this before. So with a video I've downloaded. Melanie, are you able to? It's hard for me to not share the screen here. All right, we're going to do what not to do first. So, okay. Okay, here we go.
Hey, Steve, the video's not coming through.
It's not?
Or the video, but sorry, not the sound.
Do you not hear it? Melanie, are you able to share it on your computer? I don't know. It's playing on my end, so I don't know how to fix this.
Yeah, sure. I can try as well. Oh, I see in the chat it says you may have to share computer sound, which is one of the options in the screen sharing menu. Thanks, Michelle.
All right, let's try it again.
What not to do portion of the CVD mock meeting skits. Enjoy.
Hearing it now?
Yep, all good.
Okay, so I'll go tell the office we're here.
Oh, I think he's already here. Robert,
Oh.
I think you were muted.
Hey, sorry, I'm here. How you doing?
Good. I was under the impression we'd be speaking to Representative Dominic today.
Yeah, well, he's busy right now, okay?
Oh, well, okay. Well, we've got something pretty important to tell him. I thought he'd be available. All right.
I mean, he might drop in. I don't know.
So,
maybe.
I'm sorry, who are you then?
I'm Robert, and I handle space and defense for Chairman Dominic. As you know, he is the chairman of the CJS Appropriations Subcommittee.
Oh, that's cool.
Okay. I wish I'd known that before.
Why are you here?
Yeah, so we're from an organization, and we have a very important message about the importance of aerospace and a lot of the things that we do. We represent a lot of really smart people, and so I mean we'll go through some of our recommendations, and if you need us to explain anything to us, just explain anything to you. Just
Oh
let
yeah,
us
thank
know.
you. No, I can't talk
sure.
now.
Okay, so one of the things we wanted to talk about is research and development. It's important to invest in aerospace and defense research and development. We want to support long-term federal research and technology.
Yo, Matt, sorry I'm late. Did I miss it?
Oh no, we just started. It's great. Thanks for coming.
Oh, awesome. Okay. Yeah, no problem.
Yeah,
Hey.
sorry, let me.
Sorry, Matt,
My
you were
son-
droning about something. Is there some document that I should have that gives me some of this information? I got to get out of here soon.
Okay. I don't. Yeah, we have one. It's on our webpage. You can, if you go to aiaa.org/CVD.
Matt, shouldn't you have forwarded it to him ahead
Scroll
of
to the
time?
bottom.
Yeah.
I'm very busy. I've just been too busy with stuff. Hold on. Hey, Alex, you're making too much noise. Can you quiet down a little bit?
Hello?
Yeah, listen, I got
No, I'm not busy.
5
What's up?
minutes or something. I've got another
Yeah, I'm
meeting.
just in a meeting, but it's not that important.
Yeah.
Oh, crap, I wasn't
get
muted,
it
man.
to you. And Alex, stop. I'm in a meeting.
This is outrageous.
Okay, so yeah, where was I? We need incentives for research by large corporations and small businesses.
Hey, can you just,
including-
so the congressman is chair of the CGS subcommittee, and we're working on appropriations for 2022. Can you give me some idea of where AIAA is on programs like Artemis?
Yeah, we're against it. I think you need to buy more missiles.
Buy more missiles.
I'm
CJS, we don't do defense, right?
Yeah, I think.
Well, then I think
Yeah,
you should cape Artemis, actually. I think NASA should get all the money to the Human Exploration Division.
Okay.
Wait,
Well,
what did I
that makes
miss?
sense.
Are we talking about programs? Because I don't even think we
Yeah.
need NASA with what SpaceX doing with Starship.
They're talking about giving all the money to Artemis. I was like, what? No.
Okay. All right. Yeah, I think my boss was going to come in. He might be able to get in. I don't know. And obviously you guys have your stuff together. So what else? Is there anything else? Because I really got to go. I got to go.
You can fund more programs.
It's a congressman.
Thanks for letting me come in. So, yeah, I hear you guys are a bunch of rocket scientists. Can you guys tell me a little bit about all those pillars that have been showing up randomly around the world? Is those by aliens? Or, what should I really be worried about from an alien invasion standpoint?
The AIAA believes that those pillars are from aliens. And
Okay.
I think we need to invest in research of extraterrestrials. We should perhaps unclassify the reports from Roswell.
So that's
and get
fine
everybody
and
on the
all,
same
but-
page with this, because it's happening.
But what about Dyson spheres? I've heard a lot about Dyson spheres.
I think that's
Do those help
ridiculous.
at all or anything like that?
I saw that on Star Trek.
I thought the Dyson
Yeah.
spheres were a government thing. I wanted to ask you about that, and it kind
Right,
of scares
yeah.
me if you don't know
You
anything.
can't ask the representative about that. He can't tell
Well,
you.
if we built one
That's for
around
sure.
our sun, I think
Anyways,
that'd be good.
Robert will take care of
good money
everything for you
the
guys. Glad to
industry.
see you all. Back again soon sometime. Take care.
All right,
Sorry guys, my boss is such a pain. But anyway, so we gotta wrap this up.
Okay.
He's been reading too many Q drops, and that's where we are.
Why are you in
but
such
anyways,
a rush, man? You got a hot date or something?
Yeah, well, I've got another meeting, and it's a big donor, so yeah, I gotta go.
Okay.
Well, we donate money, don't we, Matt?
Thanks.
What?
I
Yeah.
guess.
We don't.
I would
we don't
assume
have
we
time
do.
to talk to you.
I don't know
guess.
how much though.
I guess the constituents don't really matter, huh?
Mm.
I guess.
No, it's not that you don't matter. Where's he going? I gotta go. Thank
I'm
you.
still here.
Okay. We can end the meeting. I'm sure it's fine.
Okay,
Yeah.
bye.
Okay.
Thanks,
All right,
Robert.
well, thank you.
Thanks, I guess.
Yep. Bye.
Bye. I thought that went well.
Yeah, that was pretty good. We actually got to speak to a congressman. That was cool.
Yeah.
I think I got like 5 or more issues in there. So awesome.
Yeah.
All right, that was great. There was a lot of humor and people laughing, at least what I saw through the chat. And let me share go back to the meeting slides now and kind of go over, hold on here, going back and forth. This is exactly why we don't want you to share stuff during the meetings. Moving back and forth is not easy. Okay, and just so everybody knows who was who on this in these meetings, we had Melanie as an AIAA team member, and then Matt as the team captain, Arjun as a team member, David Fox, team member, Robert was our legislative assistant on the staff of the congressman, and then Tim was our member of Congress. So what not to do? Melanie, do you want to go through these and kind of, they're very obvious, and no meeting's going to really go like this, but some of these things can happen in a meeting, and we all are aware of this, and it's not how we want to be seen as a professional society trying to deliver our message to Congress.
Yeah, thank you, Steve. I agree. I saw someone in chat say it was hard to watch. It was hard to keep a straight face myself in the video because it clearly was so many things going wrong. But this is real life sometimes in virtual meetings, so that's why we just want to make sure that we talk about what to avoid and what not to do. So some of the things you might have noticed, at first everyone seemed like they were wearing appropriate clothing, but you saw Matt get up and walk away and he wasn't wearing pants. So just like Kate said, that's something that please just wear pants just in case. We can understand if like kids get in sometimes, that's that's life in this virtual world, but there's other things that you have to pay attention for, like keeping your mic muted. There was people vacuuming and eating food in the background, and that was terrible. It just seemed like there was a lot of noise in the background. And then there was also like people talking over each other and interrupting the team captain. That is not a good idea. So please keep your mics muted while you're doing it. Some things you can't avoid. I don't know if you can hear the jets flying over, so I'm sorry about that right now if you can hear them, but that would be another reason I would keep my mic muted usually. Some other things about the logistics. So you may have not noticed this exactly, but what we didn't do was call in a couple minutes ahead of time and talk as a group just to make sure we knew we were all on the same page about who was going to be speaking and what we were going to be talking about. And that's part of what we recommend before any of your Hill meetings. We also saw the team captain trying to rush through all of the key issues. You saw Matt mention like, oh, I think I got through 5 or 6 of them. That's not usually like the best path. Usually you want to kind of have like a little elevator pitch, especially introducing AIAA in the beginning. He just kind of said that we're an aerospace organization and we're here from a bunch of different companies. Another thing that we noticed was that the conversation kind of devolved into talking about different programs specifically. I think we've already mentioned this today, but just to hammer that forward, that we are not representing any specific company. We are not lobbying for any specific program. We are just representing like the general key issues of AIAA. Finally, I think that this was also like an interesting what not to do meeting because it wasn't very good from the legislative assistant side either, right? He was like, who are you guys? Like, what are you doing here? Like, I have to go. And, sometimes you do encounter those kinds of attitudes when you meet with people. Not all of the staffers are like really excited to talk about aerospace like we might be. And so I think that just keeping an open mind that might be what you come across, and maybe having some tips for like how you kind of respond and try to respond, like twist it to be positive, I think would be a good idea. So you might have noticed some other things not to do, but let's go in, and I think Steve, you can show the what to do skit.
And one other thing I want to point out is the nicknames or initials for your, you'll see right here what I do, and this is what I do with even senior executives, whether it be maybe Steve Jerzik, the acting administrator of NASA, if I have him on, or a senior executive from a company. When they are on a webinar, I have their name, first and last, dash NASA, dash AIAA, dash Airbus, whatever it may be. So in this case, you guys should say, I would recommend your first name, your last name, dash AIAA. So then the staffer or the member of Congress will see who is speaking, their name, and sometimes this is what members of Congress really like to do, is they like to personalize it too in engaging in the conversation. So they may refer to say, oh, that's a good point, Robert, thank you very much. Or, hey, Melanie, can you speak to me about this? That helps with the conversation. So just something to keep in mind when you're putting your meetings together. So let me stop sharing again. We're going to go into a professional meeting now. So bear with me as I go through this, setting this up really quickly.
welcome to the What to Do skit for this year's Congressional Visits Day.
Okay, so welcome everybody. Thanks for.
My volume.
Let's see, who do we have on the call so far? Melanie, are you here?
I'm here. Can you hear me?
This worked yesterday. Sorry, all. Melanie, I may need to have you do it. It's not working for me. This is not going well.
It was just working a minute ago, and then you paused it and went back.
Oh, okay. Here, hold on. Here, hold
Yeah, it was working.
on. Okay, sorry. I hit an accidental button. Here, hold on.
I think just make sure to click the share sound.
I'll let them know we're
I'm
here.
sorry.
And,
Let me do it.
Oh, it's good.
Let me
Wait,
just
it's
start
good.
from scratch. There we go.
All right.
Welcome to the What to Do skit for
Hey, Steve, is it frozen on your end as well?
I just kind of want to go through the plan. I'm going to start and do the introductions. Please, everybody, be on mute while we do that. And unless you're talking, stay on mute. I will do a general introduction of the AIAA, what the purpose of the meeting is while we're here. I will introduce the key issues and the state fact sheet document to provide some context. And then I'm going to, because this office is particularly interested in workforce issues and STEM, Melanie, we agreed earlier that you would start briefing some of those issues just because it's relevant to the office. And I don't think we have enough time to go through everything. Does that sound good to you?
Sounds great, Matt.
Awesome. Okay. Well, then I'll send them a note, let them know we're here.
Hey, how are you doing? Good to see you. I'm Robert. Yeah, good to be here with Chairman Dominic's office.
Thank you so much for making time to talk to us today. We're really happy here to be here. So just so you're aware, I'm Matthew Angiulo. We've got a few other constituents from your district. And we're here to talk to you today. Not only are we constituents of your district, we're also members of an organization called the American Institute of Aeronautics and Astronautics, which happens to be the world's largest professional society dedicated to the advancement of aerospace and aeronautics. We're engineers, scientists, and educators from your state. One of the things we do in our organization every year is have a fly-in to speak to our representatives about the importance of aerospace, not just to the nation, but also to our states. And this is our first virtual fly-in, so we appreciate you being patient with us. So one of the important things that we wanted to share is how important our industry is to the nation, particularly in these uncertain times that we're facing right now with the pandemic. although we know every industry is struggling to some extent. One of the things that makes us special is that we're also influential. We're critical into the recovery of the pandemic and getting back to some state of normalcy in our nation. I say that for a couple reasons. One, when the pandemic hit, aerospace and defense, we used our factories to generate large amounts of personal protective equipment for our frontline workers. We've been using aircraft to transmit the vaccine and get those rolled out safely. Also, the design and fabrication of ventilators. You probably know all that. What you might not realize is that the aerospace industry also generates about $909 billion worth of revenue for the nation. $2 billion of that comes directly from our state. We also generate a positive trade balance of $76 billion. We're able to do this because we've got 2.2 million jobs in the nation, and of those jobs, they're well paying. And generate $46 billion worth of tax revenue to the nation. So not only are we critical for supporting and recovering from the pandemic, we're also critical for providing the much needed revenue for our nation and for our state. So one of the things that we like to do here during our congressional visits is communicate some of the recommendations that we have for congressional offices and for the staff so that we can maintain those positive benefits. We've organized that in our 2021 key issues document, which we've provided to you and we'll speak to.
Yeah, thank you for sending that in advance. It was really good. Was able to read it ahead. Thank you.
Fantastic. You'll note that in the document that we've divided it up among 3 policy pillars. The first is funding stability and competitiveness. And that one talks about maintaining long-term stable funding for many of the key infrastructure and areas of our industry, from FAA to NASA, also Department of Defense, which generate those revenues and contribute to the quality of life and technology that our nation both sells globally and benefits from here at home. Another policy is research and development and innovation. And that looks forward to, for many years, we've been a leader in aerospace and defense globally. And again, that spurs the global trade that we benefit from. Over the years, many countries have caught up to us, investing in future technologies. And we need to, if we want to maintain our competitive advantage globally, we need to continually invest in in the science and technologies and developing new technologies as well, both for security of our nation, but as well as in terms of revenue. Mm-hmm. And our last policy pillar, and this is given the interests of the Representative Dominic, we're going to spend a little bit more time speaking about today, and that has to do with workforce enhancement and development, and essentially investing in our nation's young people, which quite frankly is the greatest resource our nation has, to inspire them to go into careers in science and technology, funding our educators and helping them prepare so that they can inspire and teach our young people, and putting all that infrastructure in place so that we can properly have an educated and capable workforce ready to go support those jobs in all forms of engineering and science and technology.
Yeah, and Representative Dominic, he said he might be able to drop in just briefly, and I'm not sure at what point he will, but or may. But we're very excited to have you all on the phone with us today, and can you give us an idea of as you know, Chairman Dominic chairs the CJS subcommittee, Appropriations subcommittee, and can you give us your thoughts on AIAA's view on our current NASA programs and whether you would encourage big changes or what that looks like? I did read ahead, and I'm not sure exactly where y'all fell down on that.
So what we'll recommend in our key issues document that you can see in the funding stability and competitiveness is that we recommend that we maintain steady level funding for all the NASA programs, and we fund them at an appropriate level so that they can continue to meet their short-term and long-term goals. Now, if there are some specific specific careabouts or interests that you have. We also have staff here with the AIAA that in Reston, Virginia, Steve Sidoric, who is our our government relations director, and he's here locally and can provide resources to the office at any time, particularly with specific careabouts like that. So while we may not know specifically all those answers with regards to NASA, we could certainly find the people who do. So I'll make a note and follow up with you later if that's okay.
Very good, because yeah, I mean, as you know, NASA's mission ranges from climate change and aeronautics and to exploration, and so we want to make sure that that we're using you as experts in the field. So thank you.
Absolutely, and we certainly do have the resources and those experts available to you. So we'll make a note and follow up on that.
Hey, boss, thanks so much for joining us. You know, we've been here talking about AIAA. Everybody, this is Chairman Dominic. We're so happy that he was able to drop in for just a few minutes. Oh, you're on mute, sir.
Hello?
Perfect. Thank you very much. Always the problem with Zoom these days. Thanks for your guys' interest in meeting with us today, and I'm sure Robert will brief me on all the details of the meeting. Can you just quickly give me maybe what your top 3 issues might be that we can go press forward with on the Hill?
Sure. So we provided your staff with our key issue paper that provides recommendations across 3 key policy pillars, specifically funding, stability and competitiveness, properly funding organizations like DoD, FAA, and funding in research and development, in innovation, and as well as efforts to support workforce competitiveness and development for our young people in our nation, getting them involved with STEM education. We have one of our team members who's particularly knowledgeable and interested in the workforce issues. Melanie, do you want to pick that one up and brief that to the representative?
Sure. Thank you so much, Matt. Representative Dominic, it's so great that you could join us today. I really appreciate it. I know that you have supported the workforce development and the STEM pipeline in the past, and we really appreciate that. And we would just ask that you continue to provide that same support. Passing legislation such as the Higher Education Act, I think, is really critical to workforce development, particularly in the aerospace industry. And other legislation like that could maybe increase research grants or incentivize industry to provide retraining programs and continuous education programs. All of those would be really great. We really support that, and we'd love to provide input to you as well if you need that in the future. As far as future legislation goes, we're really just looking to develop we're really hoping to support that you could support public-private partnerships as well, and also just making sure that there are pathways for the students in the K-12 education in this country to enter the STEM industry, in particular the aerospace industry, of course, because we're here with AIAA. I myself just graduated from university, and my mom also is a 2nd grade teacher, so this is a really issue that's close to me, and I'd really love if there was guidance that my mom could bring more space topics and aviation topics into her school. So I'd really love to see that going forward. And just if you could continue to support that, that would be really amazing. Thank you.
That sounds like some really great information for us to take a deeper look at. Robert, if you could take the action to get the more details of their recommendations, and we can sit down and go over those and see if there's something we can do to help in those areas, that'd be great.
Will do, sir.
Awesome.
And while we've got your time, Nick, would we be able to take a quick screenshot of the Zoom call for our newsletter back home in our state?
Absolutely. Got to support the virtual environment these days.
Fantastic. Let me just put that in gallery mode, and we'll take a screenshot. Thank you very much. We know you're very busy, but we appreciate taking the time to speak to us today.
You're welcome. You all take care.
You too. Thank you so much. And the last thing that we really wanted to discuss with you today is make sure that you know that we at the AIAA, we are resources to the office. So we know that the congressman regularly has to make decisions on bills and understand how that affects not only the nation, but also all our constituents back home in our state. And our organization represents those constituents to us. So we're just a few of many from our state that you can reach out to at any time. And if you need to get educated on any particular topics or know how they influence our state or the nation, we're happy to provide that to you. And also, as I mentioned before, we do have staff in Reston, Virginia, who are on the Hill or available to you on a regular basis. Our organization often provides testimonies at committee hearings and other education events for representatives and staff like yourself. So please don't hesitate to call on us at any time.
Very good. Well, thank you so much for your time. We look forward to welcoming you back to the Capitol soon. This virtual environment is so difficult, but we really appreciate your time.
Okay. Well, thank you very much. And again, it's been a pleasure speaking to you today.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.
All right. Okay, hold on, let me go back to our slide deck now. All right, thank you everybody for being patient. Some user error here. I've never had to do that before, share videos. All right, that was a professional meeting. Melanie, you want to take it from what went well there and what we are advising everybody to do next week?
Sure. So there was a lot of good points about that skit. You saw that, like I mentioned previously, we met beforehand to go over what would be happening during the meeting. We also verified that our videos and mics were working, and Matt made sure he knew who was on the call. That would be good in case you know that someone is absent, and especially if you planned ahead of time via email, who would be speaking about what. So if you know who is on the call right then you could adjust your plan if needed. Then when the staffer called in, the legislative assistant, Robert, he introduced himself, and then Matt did a really great job introducing that we are coming from AIAA and what is AIAA and how that they, and that AIAA represent, like who AIAA represents. Then Matt did a really good job at reviewing just the highlights of not only some of the issues that we've been talking about with regards to COVID and how it has an impact on the whole industry, but also the highlights of the 3 key pillars. And he didn't go into any deep detail about any of the pillars, which made it able to fit appropriately within a few minutes without him trying to rush through as fast as he could possibly talk and name as many things as he possibly could, so I think that was really well done. And of course, so this whole skit was about 15 minutes. So if you have 30 minutes, that extra time could be where you go into more detail and maybe where you talk about legislation and are able to answer more questions from the legislative assistant. And so that's kind of how you can range your meetings to talk, for like anywhere from 15 to 30 minutes, depending on what that staffer has available. Other good things is that we had our mics muted and we were obviously all paying attention. No one was on their phones. Maybe it seemed like we were all quiet, but like I said, that, if you have extra time at the end, that's when you can answer questions. And Matt was able to point to one of the team members, myself in this skit to talk a little bit more on one of the meetings. So, that was a way I was able to contribute. And I just want to say too that just being there, I think, is really valuable. It's not just one person who is coming to talk, but it's all of these constituents from that representative's district coming, or just their state coming to like show support for them. So even if you are quiet, I think your presence is still like really impactful. So just keep that in mind. And then some other things, the representative came in late. We saw that. And Matt was really flexible. He was able to answer that quick question and, change what he had been saying. So I think that was good. We thanked them for their time. We reminded them that AIAA is a resource several times. And overall, I think that meeting went really well.
Okay, and just so everybody knows, we're recording this full training session. I'm gonna hopefully have our web person get it up on the AIAA CVD webpage here by the end of the day, so you can watch this back. There was a question about Kate Cronmiller's slide deck. We can definitely, Matt has already sent around an email to everybody, all registrants, with the this slide deck, because I know some of you were having trouble viewing it on here. I will respond to that email shortly with Kate's slides. These particular videos, I don't know if it's going to be easy for me to share them, over an email. I would probably just refer to this actual full training slide deck, full training recording, and then skip ahead to that portion of the program, which obviously it's toward the end here. I don't think we have any other questions about this. There's one more slide I want to get into. These are just important points we need to stress and stress and stress. You are here to represent AIAA, not your company, not your program, not your school project, whatever. If, and I'm in bolding state captains, if any team member is doing this in a meeting, is promoting their project, or they're being, bashing another company or whatnot, you will be removed from the CVD program and you will never be able to participate again. I promise you that. So this is very important. Again, continue to be professional, engaging, don't have your side conversations, be respectful of the member of Congress, of the staffer, of each team member. It's important to capture these notes and provide that necessary feedback, and always thank the staffer, especially the member too, if they're there, for dedicating their time and their support to this meeting and helping our cause. It's vital. You can always follow up. I strongly suggest that you follow up with an email directly to the staffer. Once the meeting is over, it doesn't have to be immediately, but at some point, maybe a few days later or the following week, thanking them. And again, that's where you provide an information paper or more details, getting back to them that they've asked for. So I don't really have anything else, and I don't see any other questions in the chat or the Q&A. Robert, Matt, did you have anything to add?
Not for me, Matt. Do you have anything?
Matt may have stepped
I
away.
just want to thank everybody for their time today. And if you have questions, please follow up with your state captains or your deputy directors. We still have some runway here. I mean, a lot of stuff on the Hill. Meetings don't get scheduled to the last minute. So don't think that everything's set in stone. You still have some opportunities to reach out and get coverage of your state. So please engage with your state captains. And if you're not hearing from them, reach out to the deputy directors. So you should all have that contact information from previous webinars and other stuff. So please reach out to us and let us know how we can help if needed.
Yeah, and you should have an assignment by now on your team. And if you don't know what your role is on your team yet, then that's what this next little session is for y'all to sort of get your wits about you and figure out who's handling what, and if you haven't done that already.
Yeah, there was one question about if you can say what university you went for or graduated from or whatever. That's fine. I mean, that's totally fine to say, especially if you are a student or a young professional and you're on Team Ohio and you graduated from Ohio State. Obviously, they have a great aerospace engineering program. Yes, you're welcome to say that. That's fine. It's just getting into these other separate issues, not committing to speaking about our key issues here. That's where you get into trouble. Now, last thing I want to point out on the state fact sheets, and this is how I usually open a meeting with, especially a member of Congress that may, or a staffer that doesn't know who I am or who AIAA is. I refer this fact sheet. There are usually there's information about, the presence of aerospace there. And we also, on the landing page for the CVD, the single state fact sheets, there is a large map of the United States, and it lists how many AIAA members are in each state. So in California, it's in like 3,000 and some, I believe. So I'll say, oh, by the way, I represent AIAA, the world's largest aerospace technical society. We are the academics, we are the aerospace engineers for working for companies. We are working for the various government agencies. But oh, by the way, you have there's actually 3,000 members in your state of California. We don't have it down to the district level, but that's a lot. And so I always mention that in my meetings, just so they have an understand of how many members that we represent in their states. So that's all I have. Again, as Robert mentioned, you should be now moving on to your team breakouts, and you will hopefully understand what your agenda is for next week and your roles. That's very critical. If you're not doing it today, you should be putting together a breakout session and team gathering in advance of your meetings next week. Last question, is it inappropriate to bring up government locality rates for government employees in their district, or is that considered specific org's interests? I would not mention that at all. It's I don't have those numbers for AIAA, so no, I wouldn't address that question. So with that, we're going to close a little early here. Thank you. Thank you, Melanie. Thank you, Tim. Thank you, Matt. Thank you, Robert. Obviously, we appreciate Rick and Kate for their contributions earlier. Hopefully, you found this beneficial. This, in person, we do these, and it's a little bit, more engaging. We hope we've addressed most of your questions, and this helps you prepare. You can always watch it back. And again, remember that there will be a survey that goes out after the meetings. And we strongly encourage you to respond to that, provide feedback. We'll improve this training next year based on your feedback. And also get your meeting reports in for your state teams. That's very important for us to capture those metrics. So thank you very much. We really appreciate it. And here's to great successful meetings next week. Take care, everybody.